Sticks, we're getting close to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving tradition of this one family, they have both turkey and ham. And every year, the mom cuts off both ends of the ham. And one year, finally, one of the kids asks, Mom, why do you do that? Why do you cut off the ends of the ham every year? And the mom goes, well, I don't really know. I just did it because my mom did it. And so everybody at the table looks at Grandma and goes, why did you cut off the ends of the hams? And she goes, I didn't have a big enough pan. Context, right? That's what we're dealing with all the time, is framing and context. And how we do that is what makes the difference in our lives. Okay. So today we're going to talk about why those 60 rockers all died at 27. So let's start with superstition. You know, I did a big talk on superstition last week, so I figure we'll start there. 2 plus 7 is 9. In numerology, that's a transition number. So we could buy into the fact that they all died at 27 because it was a transition time, and that's how they transitioned, right? We could look at it that way. Turns out in science, there's something that happens to the brain between 25 and 28 where it shifts. It stops growing. And that has impact on people, that shift of not growing anymore. And so there's something to the fact, and I remember specifically the crisis I had at 28. You know, some have it 27, 26, me 28. I'm a late bloomer. And so, you know, and how I was sure that this was it, that my life wasn't getting any better, that somehow I had blown it. And I had to go through that to get to a place of where I could continue moving forward. So you have all these rockers who in the 60s reached the epitome of success, and they go through the same thing. They went through something that is so prevalent through, you know, for so many people at whatever age. It has to do with a movie called As Good as It Gets. Anybody remember that movie with Jack Nicholson? He walks, at some point, he's in this room with a whole bunch of other people at the psychologist's office, and he looks around and he goes, what if this is as good as it gets? And everybody in there just goes, ugh. So you have all these rockers who are famous. Now, they killed themselves. What does that mean? That tells us a couple of things. That tells us they weren't happy. They weren't happy. And most people, when they're not happy, who then go to the length of suicide, which is what an overdose is, go there because they think this is as good as it gets. That's why they did it. They had reached what they thought was the pinnacle of their lives. They thought, what am I doing here? I'm successful. Why don't I feel happier? And they didn't. Obviously. That's why they were shooting up so much. They were not happy. Now, we in our movement know that there is infinite possibilities, but they were clearly not in that place. They clearly either forgot or didn't know to begin with that there was more, that they could actually step beyond where they were. Now, lots of us reach that place in all kinds of times in our lives. There's this whole other phenomenon that I have learned about in my travels of 50-year-olds. Did I tell you guys this already? Okay. Of 50-year-olds around the country, men, who did not succeed at what it was they were after. And so developed, and I say so because this is what I believe, but all those men developed a rare disease, not a common disease, a rare one, that made them so ill that they wound up moving back in with their 70 or 80-year-old mothers, who then took care of them until the mom died. This is going on around the country in droves. Men who didn't achieve, who then all of a sudden wind up with these outrageously rare diseases. It's the same thing. What killed off the rockers at 27 and what has all these men having the disease at 50 is that they think it's as good as it gets. That the fact that they failed, that's it. And that they're done. But we know that's not true, right? That's what we stand for here. I have lots of quotes for you today. Put that there. The greatest good, this is Ernest Holmes, by the way, our founder. The greatest good that can come to anyone is in the forming within him or her of an absolute certainty of the relationship, with their relationship to the universe, forever removing the sense of heaven as being outside oneself. Such an understanding teaches us that there can never come a time when we shall stop progressing. That age is an illusion, that limitation is a mistake, that unhappiness is ignorance. This understanding will rob a person of their loneliness and give him a sense of security which knows no fear, a peace without which no life can be happy, a poise which is founded on this peace, and a power which is the result of the union and peace and poise. Carl Jung said that in all his studies, near the end of his life, that he was sure that the only way to heal was not just through psychology, but through having a spiritual center. That it actually, what you needed was both to make that work. So I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. I have just sold a business for quite a lot of money, and I'm standing in the middle of a bridge, having just bought a house. And all my life to this moment, I thought freedom was the most important thing. That if I just had all the freedom in the world, I would be happy. If only I had that freedom, then I would be happy. And I'm standing in the middle of this bridge, surrounded by gorgeousness, and I just break down crying. Because I realized how miserable I was. I mean, I was miserable. And it was at that moment I realized that there's no such thing as an if only. You know, that I was going to have to find this thing within me. I was going to have to somehow find a way to rise. And what I've noticed is as I studied all these rockers who died at 27, is they were unwilling to rise. They would rather die. We place limitations on us all the time. We're too old, too sick. Only a guy can do that. Only pretty women get to do that. And all those things are baloney. This movement is all about, our teaching is all about the infinite possibility within each of us. It is all about rising up, but we got to do the rising. It's really easy to sit back and go, I'm too old for that. I lived a good life. This is now. And you know what? If what you're up to wherever you are in life is all I want is simplicity, all I want is peace, all I want is to come to terms with whatever it is I want to come to terms with, that's great, but don't lie to yourself about it, thinking you can't have the other things, because in our movement, in an infinite possibility universe, there can't be anything about can't, right? You can't have can't if it's infinite. So that's what we're here doing. Dr. Holmes, once again. Life is infinite energy coupled with limitless creative imagination. It is the invisible essence and substance of every visible form. Its nature is goodness, truth, wisdom, and beauty, as well as energy and imagination. Our highest satisfaction comes from a sense of consciousness union with this invisible life. All human endeavor is an attempt to get back to first principles, to find such an inward wholeness that all sense of fear, doubt, and uncertainty vanishes. That was not the case with any of these 60s rockers. They clearly didn't feel that. They clearly did not feel what we talk about in our identity prayer. Right? Because how can you feel hopeless in the center of knowing infinite possibility? Talk about a can't. You can't feel hopeless and at the same time know that there's infinite possibility. So if you're feeling any sort of hopelessness, then you're not in infinite possibility, so that's where you want to get to. You know, our minds and our bodies and our beingness can do awfully strange things for us. We have hurt. Things happen in life that hurt, right? But then we defend that hurt. Now we've made it something else. Now we have fear about that hurt. Now we've made it even something else. It's the defending of hurt and the fear of hurt that leads to depression. That's what gets you there. Having the hurt itself isn't, because some things hurt. Grieving is a good thing. It's actually a healing thing. When we have loss, when things aren't working out, we experience and hurt, that's great. But then in the same token, it's time to lift yourself up. Lift yourself up out of whatever you think is limiting your possibility. I heard somebody a few days ago say that they were perpetually behind on stuff. And I thought, wow, that's the last thing I would want to affirm. You know, time is on our side. Time is on our side. Time is on our side. But we can easily fall into, well, you know, I heard somebody say, somebody else was saying, I'm sick. Okay, if you want to, you know, and they wanted to defend that sickness by telling me all about their symptoms. Okay. How do you rise if that's what you're affirming and defending? So it isn't so much that we don't have these things, but are you defending them? Are you holding on to them in a way that doesn't allow them to pass? Or are you holding on to the anchor of health, well-being? You know, when things don't go well in my life, I grab onto the anchor of my life works. And then my mind might start going crazy. Oh, this happened. You know, and then I grab onto it and go, no, my life works. And then maybe my mind does it again. Well, maybe. And then my mind does it again. And then all of a sudden I'm back in there, well, they did this, and they did this to me, and this to that. And I got to go, no. My life works. There's something going on here that's going to work for me if I can stand in this place, this anchor of knowing that in an infinite possibility universe, of course, this works out. But I got to be willing to stand there, really anchor in. And then if the waves and the tides start pulling me, I got to bring myself back. And the waves and the tides start pulling me, I got to bring myself back. And that's how that works. That's what you got to do. You got to bring yourself back, because there's going to be opportunities for doing so. Opportunities where people will say stuff to you like, you can't do that. What are you trying to do here? Are you crazy? When you know in you it's yours to do. And then maybe you bought into it. Maybe you're telling yourself, am I crazy to think I can do this? And then you bought in to your own craziness instead of standing in the truth. And the truth is that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings whose lives work to the level of embodiment we're willing to believe and take on. So it does mean taking it on. You know, here's these rockers who have this miraculous amount of success. And then they fell into what I like to call the Israelite syndrome. The Israelite syndrome is in the movie The Ten Commandments, where Moses keeps doing these miraculous things, and then the Israelites, after praising God for these miraculous things, then go back into fear and think nothing else good is going to happen. Right? I've told you guys this story before. I know I have. Like at the Red Sea. You know, here, Moses has done this miraculous thing. He has actually freed them from the Egyptians. And they're out by the Red Sea, totally freaking out, as if no miracle has happened up to then. And Moses stands up there, Charlton Heston stands up there and goes, "Have you forgotten the might of God?" And he slams down the stick he's got in his hand, and the Red Sea parts. And then they're like, "Oh." Like they'd never seen a miracle before. Right? When the whole movie's one after the next. So you got these 27-year-old rockers who miraculously catapult at such a young age to the top of the food chain in rock music, and then forget that that was done by a miraculousness of a divine, and that means there's more divine to go. They think that's as good as it gets. And here's the most fascinating thing about as good as it gets. Because the power of the divine is so fantastic, if you believe that's as good as it gets, then that's as good as it gets. You can limit your good by the same power that you can increase it by. And so, it's really important to see what you're telling yourself, because, you know, not that anybody here may commit suicide, but that's what can happen. If you're being silly about how you're wielding the power of the universe. Because that's what we're doing. We are wielding the power of the universe to either limit our good or expand it every single moment. So you got to ask yourself, when you're saying something to yourself, does this thing I'm thinking, does this thing I have embodied in this moment expand my use of this incredible power, or shrink it? I mean, it's the same power. If you are dead set on how poor you are, this power will go, "Okay, you're poor." If you are dead set on how sick you are, this power is going, "Okay, you're sick." Or we could be like, boom, expanding our lives in ways we can't even imagine yet. That's what's really possible here. St. Francis Assisi said, "Start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible." Just be moving in the direction. Now, this isn't just about creating things in the outside world. This is about creating our joy within. There was a time I had huge bouts of depression and really struggled with myself around happiness. This teaching is what constantly reminded me that part of the problem was I was actually defending my depression. I'm depressed, man. I don't want to go do that. I'm depressed, man. I'm staying in bed today. And every time I said, "I'm depressed," I'd be more depressed. There was nothing there that allowed me until I started shifting that around, going, "No, okay, I get that these feelings are going on, but there's something greater in me that can lift me up. There's a power beyond me that can lift me up. I have to work with this power so I can be lifted up. Yes, I'm not feeling so great. I feel hurt. I feel down, but I can be lifted up. And it wasn't until I started saying that to myself that things started to change. Now my bouts of depression last approximately 25 seconds, which is very different from the 6 to 9 months I used to go through. It takes practice. It takes really digging in. It takes being willing to be committed to lifting ourselves beyond whatever limitation we may be setting for ourselves. I got one more quote for you. This is from Deepak Chopra. You and I are essentially infinite choice makers. In every moment of our existence, we are in that field of all possibilities where we have access to the infinity of choices. I think people who stick needles in their arms and commit suicide don't feel the infinite choices that they have. I think that that's why those rockers died. And I think that we have a power here. I walked in here today and I told Howard the name of my talk. And the first thing he said is, it's because they didn't have science of mind. He's right. That's why they died. Lori Williams was at our poetry reading, which Christine Allen ran on Friday. It was fantastic. And she read a story about a little boy looking at a birthday cake that he just had to have. He just had to have it. And then his mother said, well, look up one row at that birthday cake. It's even better. And he looked up and he saw the dinosaurs on the other birthday cake and went, oh my God, I never even imagined a birthday cake like that. That's what's possible when we look up. Sometimes we get so caught up in, this is what it is, that we lose sight of what's possible by simply lifting up, by looking up. That's why we come to here together. That's why we do this together, so that we can remind each other to lift each other up, to be in the divine, and to remember the infinite possibility that is there for each and every one of us, every moment of our lives. I love you.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God.
Tu es l'image de Dieu.
I hold you in my heart.
Tu es l'image de l'amour.
You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God.
Tu sei la luce di Dio.
I hold you in my heart.
Tu sei il volto dell'amore.
You are a